How's it going, my friend?
Pretty good, pretty good. Trying to you got see your conversations and everything. Trying to keep up with keeping up with the new coaching change. We're kind of used to it here at Florida. It happens a good bit, but
Right.
it's something different every time. But just kind of keeping up with all the Fast and Furious newness of it all. With a bowl game coming up tomorrow as well. You kind of you're looking everywhere, man. Just trying to everything coming at your way.
Dave, I saw you tweet this, and it's kind of a LSU thing too about Brian Kelly. Were Florida fans expecting Billy Napier to coach that bowl game? I mean, people were expecting Brian Kelly to coach that bowl game too, and I'm like, guys, that doesn't happen. But it seems like Florida fans thought he was going to get up in there and start coaching, huh?
Man, I get the fans that don't know any better, I guess. So yeah, I don't get that thought. I don't know where it comes from. Where hey, this new coaching staff, they're going to, in 2 weeks, install a new system, terminology, everything, just for one game now. Just one game.
Right.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yeah, you had your opportunities like Barry Alvarez comes in. Of course, he was connected to Wisconsin. It was still his system. He just slides over from AD to be a head coach there in Wisconsin. It's a lot different scenario than what we're talking about for our two programs right now.
Well, look, Dave, I think it's interesting, and I'm glad that we're bringing you on because a lot of people around LSU wanted LSU to entertain Billy Napier. But Florida moved really quickly. They did not want to waste time, and they go and get Billy. What's the last couple of weeks been like since Billy's stepped in Gainesville? I mean, I know that there's going to be some really interesting recruiting battles now with Billy in the state of Louisiana and vice versa. But how's it been for him the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, so he gets his introduction. Well, first of all, he's named head coach, University of Florida. And that process, as you said, Blake, went by really, really quick. And rare in a coaching search does it happen where the first target, the first name that comes out, that's all over the place. Right. Rarely does that happen. But that was the case at Florida. Billy Napier was pretty much the hot name to begin with from the get-go. It was the only candidate Scott Strickland met with. He was sold in that meeting to go right away. Look, this is my guy. And even at the during the search, he said, "Look, I went and looked up. Look, of course, I'm going to do my due diligence. I'm going to do what I have to. I'm going to talk to everybody. I'm going to talk to past coaches. I'm going to talk to past confidants, past colleagues." But Scott Strickland said, "You know what? I went to YouTube and just searched Billy Napier and just searched random videos." He goes, "What really sold me on Billy Napier was." There's after a game, he's in a post-game media scrum where you're standing as a head coach and there's probably 7, 8 media members beside you. He stopped the little media scrum, so two people who were cleaning out the stadium and all could just continue to do their job. And he was like, "That spoke more to me than anything that anybody ever told me." Just kind of speaking to the person Billy Napier is. So with the big culture change that Florida needs going from Dan Mullen to Billy Napier, something like that really spoke to Scott Strickland. So yeah, Strickland targeting, he was very interested, very sold on the interview. A couple of days later, Billy Napier's named head coach at the University of Florida, and then coaches in the Sun Belt Championship game, comes to Florida, does his opening press conference, goes back to the state of Louisiana the very next day to start recruiting Javonte Citizen and ETN, the running backs. And so, he's going where his bread's buttered. He has relationships there. Good on him to kind of start that. Had some decommitments, had some transfer announcements along the way. Then on signing day was able to have a splash on signing day by getting Shamar James, Kamari Wilson, both Florida-Georgia battles. Hey, what do we want to see? Florida's got to catch up with Alabama. Florida's got to catch up with Georgia. In head-to-head battles on signing day, Florida did their part. So you hope as a Gator fan that is the inkling, that is the hint of when this thing gets rolling, then your class of 2025 are those battles you start winning.
Right. And Dave, so 2 questions, and I'll go to the recruiting one first, but I want to get to what you thought about what was really going on behind the scenes because the Billy Napier thing happened so quick. But, man, flipping Kamari Wilson like that, I mean, I read the story now, and you can tell me if this is true or not, but Kamari Wilson saying that Billy Napier is sitting in the middle of the Walmart saying, "You got to go talk to my mama before I flip."
Yeah.
I mean, look, Dave, the rivalry between LSU and Florida is big. Let's not get it twisted. Or the Urban Meyer, Jacob Hester's, Chris Lakes, all of that. Brother, I think it just got bigger. Okay, because of that connection, and it, like I kind of sit this from afar, and I keep watching Billy. I'm like, hey, bro, chill out. Javonte Citizen don't like no orange and blue. Just sit out. Just don't, don't come over here. But it's going to be interesting, Dave. Even though the class wasn't huge, how did Florida fans react to that? They were like, oh, shit, like this guy's out here recruiting. Did they have a big reception to that, him doing so well so early?
Yeah, and that was part of the reason the move was made. It wasn't that it was more than Dan Mullen winning 6 games or and losing 6 games in a season. It was, well, where's the hope of the program? Where's the program trending? And it was not trending well and mainly because of recruiting. When you want to look at it, you were not closing any kind of gap. You had your 2020 splash, but even that is look, we know you lost to LSU season finale, and yeah, you played Bama great, but then you told us a bowl game didn't matter versus Oklahoma, and starting right there and bleeding into 2021. And then looking at recruiting as well, there was just very little hope that Florida could get it fixed to be a consistent threat in the SEC East. So it starts with recruiting right there. And yes, Billy Napier making that splash on signing day was, I think, a signifier that this isn't going to be a cakewalk for Georgia when they start recruiting head-to-head versus Florida anymore. It's not going to be a cakewalk anymore. Now, I'm not sitting here going to say Florida's going to recruit top 2, top 3 like Georgia does every year, but you need to be up there every now and then. So, you go get a guy in place that can do that. So, and Blake, as I mentioned, he did rub some Gator fans the wrong way when he comes in and there was, like I said, transfers that were going to leave the University of Florida. And some guys, just in all honesty, he didn't want this class. They had committed to Florida. They had committed to Dan Mullen. These are not his players. They're not the guys that he went out and scouted and recruited. And part of that was there's it's more than a rumor. It's been pretty much confirmed that he's asked some players out there to send a workout tape, send a workout video. Why wouldn't he? He's at Louisiana. He's not recruiting these same type of players. He's not recruiting these players at Louisiana. He needs to learn a lot about them in a very short amount of time. So if that's something he needs to be done, first of all, it tells you who wants to be a Gator. Second of all, he's going to get whatever the part of workout he wants them to see. So there's 2 things right there. So that rubbed some prospects the wrong way. And, so, okay, well, that told him you don't want to be a Gator. If you don't want to go through that little process, okay, we'll move on from you. And then, just some of them, he just probably didn't want the class because this is his team now. He wants to go get his own guys.
Well, and Dave, just covering him from afar in an aspect, you ain't going to tell him what the hell to do. I'm just telling you. Look, you ain't going. He's got that Sabanist thing to him, that Dabo. You ain't gonna tell him what to do, and it's why a lot of people like him. But Dave, it's interesting to me because we were just talking about how it just moves so quickly with Strickland and Napier. They had to be talking behind the scenes, right? I mean, like we knew in Louisiana. Like, let me give you an example. Somebody started sending out a picture of Scott Strickland at a racetrack a gas station in the middle of Lafayette. Okay. And so I'm like, bro, and Dan technically wasn't fired yet. You know what I mean? And I'm like, man, and then it wasn't 45 minutes later, he's fired. And I'm like, man, this is getting weird, bro. They had to be working on behind the scenes, right? Like they were talking at least, maybe not meeting, but they had to have talked beforehand. I know I might sound like a conspiracy theorist, but do you think that Strickland always had Napier in his sights a little bit?
Yeah, so Florida loses to South Carolina, and that was the second week in November, I believe. First week in November, second week in November, after Florida Georgia game. Week after Florida Georgia. So I think it was the first weekend in November. Florida loses that game. Doesn't look good. I think from everything I can gather, that's when maybe everything kind of started and the wheels started in place and the motion in place. Florida got embarrassed in Columbia, South Carolina that night. I mean, I was there, cold, windy, and Florida's getting their butt beat. Not a fun trip. The tailgate before the game was fun, but the game itself wasn't there. So, yeah, an embarrassing loss there for Dan Mullen and staff there. Gets rid of John Hevesy and Todd Grantham the very next day. And look, I think from everything I can gather, conversations behind the scenes started happening right there of who to go target, what would the interest be. It's like, hey, I'm not talking to Billy Napier right now, but hey, agent, what's the interest?
Right.
Would he like to come to Florida? And I think right then and there, you can kind of say the wheel started in motion with that Florida-South Carolina game.
Dave, so very quick questions for you. I'm going to fire these one off pretty quick. I think Mark has a good one. He goes, #Ask Dave about Jack Miller and could he start? I think that gave a lot of people look, I was high on Jack Miller for LSU, and then Miles Brennan came back, whatever. But that kind of put to rest the type of quarterback that Billy Napier wants too. Like, were you surprised that Jack Miller is going to be at Florida, and when you're surprised that Billy was able to pull him in?
Surprised in a way because look, you guys know that the AR hype is real. It's been real, this whole season. So at least I'll give Miller credit for, okay, well, I know this AR hype is real. I'm going to come compete for the job anyway. And part of that is Anthony Richardson tomorrow will not be playing in the Gasparilla Bowl. He's had a minor knee surgery. So he wants to be able to hit the ground running in spring practice for Billy Napier, his new head coach. He doesn't want to miss spring practice. So got that surgery out of the way, and hopefully by the time spring practice rolls around, he'll be taking part in spring practice to go put his foot and, start the race for starting quarterback position. Now with Miller, Emory Jones, more than likely, he's already been announced he's going to transfer. So his last time as a Gator, we'll see in the Gasparilla Bowl. So he'll be out. Who knows what happens with backups, Carlos Del Rio and Jalen Kitna as well with this coaching change. So Florida needed to go get a quarterback in the transfer portal, and Jack Miller was the guy there from Ohio State. And look, I've already heard it, of course. Oh, a backup quarterback from Ohio State. Maybe this is the next Joe Burrow. Don't put the pressure on the kid to be that and everything that goes along with that. So look, it's just a piece. Florida's probably going to need some depth. But it did tell me, you look at Levi Lewis at Louisiana and a dual threat quarterback, and Miller's probably somewhat of a dual threat quarterback as well, but not in the same mold as Lewis. He's going to be pocket first, going to get rid of the ball. If he needs to run, he can run. So it does let me know Billy Napier's willing to bring kind of, a couple styles of quarterback in play here and not necessarily stick to just a dual threat power run quarterback. He'll go get a pocket passer as well.
Well, and I think he does. Look, Levi was not a good thrower of the football when he first started. And the leaps and bounds that he made throwing the football were kind of, I'm not going to lie, were pretty impressive. So, Dave, I think you got something there. And look, I think it's a good battle between AR and Jack Miller.
Dave, and before we go on with that too, you hope if AR is what you think he is, unfortunately, next year might be the only year you have him.
Right.
So, that next year will be his third year. If he's the quarterback you want him to be, and if he is, then Billy Napier's hit a gold mine in year one at Florida. If he is that type of quarterback, he may only be there a year anyway. So who knows, where your quarterback depth is, and if he's leaving after 1 year.
Dave, I ain't saying this because you're on the show, and I'm being dead ass honest. That kid stays healthy, it's a problem. With Billy Napier's offense, with that kid, it's a problem. Now, can they block? Can they do other things? Yeah. That's a whole different topic. But that kid's is lethal now. And in that offense, that's one thing I told a couple buddies, I'm like, please, God, let him transfer. Please, please let the portal work in our favor for once. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. Look, a lot of LSU fans are going to know this, and it's been a debate here, and I don't know how much so in Florida, about Corey Raymond. I know that we kind of talked about this off the record, but even to bring a little bit of this conversation onto the record, Corey Raymond, man, that's a big pull for Billy Napier, especially with all the guys that Corey Raymond has in recruiting on paper under his belt. Dave, how excited, I guess, are Gator fans? Because I know how unexcited LSU fans were when he left. Has it been a big deal that when he was hired and was the associate head coach or named the associate head coach?
Yeah, Blake, absolutely. And look, it doesn't really matter what happened at LSU. You can best bet every other program probably out there wanted him in some form or fashion.
No doubt.
So for Billy Napier to get him and his first Florida staff, it doesn't matter what happened at LSU. You kept him away from Georgia. You kept him away from Alabama. You kept him away from whoever else wanted him, because I'm sure he would have had plenty of suitors lining up to go be on their sideline. So it was a really big pull there for Billy Napier. And look, I'm sure there's a Louisiana connection, being so close there for the last 4 years with Billy Napier and having a relationship there, just being in Louisiana. So I'm sure they've maybe had a beer or drink a cup of coffee together or being there in the state. So it probably wasn't a very hard pull with some kind of background there. But yeah, it's a huge pull there. I mean, look, LSU and Florida, along with Ohio State out there, throwing around this DBU debate and all that. Well, he's a key piece in that in the last decade or so. So you bring him over from LSU now to Florida, and you hope he can bring that recruiting prowess there from that state into Florida. Have a lot of those relationships. I mean, he already paid big dividends there with Devin Moore and Kamari Wilson there on signing days. Two secondary players that Florida got on signing day, and they mentioned Raymond was a key part in that, and having already a known relationship with him just because of a relationship at LSU as well. So yeah, already paying early dividends, and you do hope with that big role at Florida as well, helping Billy Napier there, that he sticks around for a couple of years, that can really get his roots there in the state of Florida to help Billy Napier in closing that gap versus the top of the SEC in recruiting.
Right, and speaking of that, because we got a lot of people in here asking the same question about what goes on in the state of Florida, and nobody knows it better than you. Mario Cristobal gets named at Miami. How much more difficult does that make it for Billy? Like, look, I got to see Miami win it start winning before I start putting my eggs in that basket. But Dave, it gets a little bit harder. And just talk to the three team race there. Really, I mean, do you think Billy can come out on top, or does Mario Cristobal have a bigger hill to climb than what maybe Billy does?
Like, I still think the way it probably works out is Mario, to me, still helps a lot in South Florida, but there's still a lot of those guys there. So I still think you can kind of sprinkle in. Florida needs to do better in Ocala, in Lakeland, in Jacksonville, in Tampa, in Orlando. Florida needs to do better in those areas before they even think about it. And Florida's done pretty well in South Florida the last few years anyway. So if Mario does create some kind of fence around South Florida, like Miami has done before, then Billy does need to make sure he hits Jacksonville, Orlando, those other areas that I mentioned. Make sure he hits those areas hard, and keep away from Florida State a bit, but also keep those out-of-state schools out of. It's not just Florida State and Miami. Dan Mullen's, one of the biggest things that is the biggest attractor of his from his time at Florida was he had a golden opportunity to shut the door in the state of Florida in recruiting while Miami and FSU were struggling, and he did not do so. Georgia came in and got who they wanted. Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, all those schools came in and got who they wanted, not able to take advantage of beating Miami and FSU head-to-head early in his tenure at Florida, not able to use that as a stepping stone in recruiting. That needs to change. And with Mario Cristobal there at Miami, it is going to be a little more difficult there. But I think if you have the right guy in place at Florida, I've always said this, Blake, if you have the right guy, I ain't worried about anybody else. If you got the right guy in place, everything will take care of itself.
Dave, I feel like, and I will let you out on this one, but I feel like LSU and Florida are aligned in a lot of ways. Like Dan Mullen, Ed Orgeron. Maybe less, and maybe Urban in a sense. The later years of Urban weren't that great. So there are a lot of line, and I'm like you, man. You get the right guy in those programs, it's lethal. But look, trying to convince 528 people of that on every given night is not that easy. So we'll have to just wait and see. But Dave, you've been fantastic as always. Great to bring you back in. We've been meaning to get you in, but there's just so much chaos that goes on throughout a coaching search. But tell everybody where they can find you and all your great stuff. Yeah,
you can follow me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. You can find Gators Breakdown on YouTube, all the popular podcast platforms out there as well. Just a lot going on out there. Florida's got the Gasparilla Bowl tomorrow night versus in-state UCF. So big preview of that up right now. Post-game show tomorrow night before we take a few days off for a hot holiday. But Blake, man, thanks for having me on. Florida LSU week's always a fun week, man. So happy holidays to you and your family, and hope all the recovery from the hurricane's been.
Uh-oh. I don't know what happened there, Dave, but I appreciate it. I don't know if you heard what I heard, but I appreciate it. I think it's my mixer that's going out. But I appreciate it, Dave. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. That's Gator Dave from Gators Breakdown. I really don't know what just happened.